Electricast.
Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, I hope all is well with you today and you are enjoying this holiday season. This is another special Wednesday morning episode brought to you by a sponsor, Jeremy Clevenger Fitness, who we featured on episode 145. If you haven't heard that episode yet, I encourage you to go back and take a listen, especially if you are struggling to get and stay in shape as a busy leader. I have another great show lined up for you today, but before we get started, I just want to remind you that it is Christmas, and I encourage you to consider giving the gift of leadership to the leaders and future leaders on your Christmas list. I've written 3 leadership books. I have the watch, you have the watch, and all in the same boat, and you can get all 3 books for less than $50 on Amazon or my website, johnsrennie.com. They make the perfect gift to have under the tree or to mail to the leaders in your life. So get your order in today to ensure delivery before Christmas. Also, I just wanted to mention that Deep Leadership is now ranked in the top 2% most popular shows out of 3 million podcasts globally, according to ListenScore. And also, we are now in the top 100 management podcasts in the U.S., according to Chartable. So I wanted to thank each and every one of you for listening in every week and sharing these episodes with your friends. You have helped this podcast grow into a top-performing show, so thank you very much. Well, that is it. Today we're going to be talking about how to use your leadership style for success, and my guest is Robert Jordan. And Robert is the CEO of InterimExecs, and he's placed hundreds of leaders at companies around the country, and he's learned that the right leader in the right role at the right time will skyrocket success for both the leader and the organization. So how do we get the right fit for success? Well, listen in and find out. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20-plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world, actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Robert Jordan. Robert is the CEO of InterimExecs, a company that matches top executives with companies around the world. He is the author of Right Leader, Right Time, Discover Your Leadership Style for a Winning Career and Company. In this book, Robert identifies 4 unique leadership styles that, when applied to the right role at the right time, will skyrocket success for both the leader and the organization. I am excited to have him on the show to talk about these styles and how they work. So, Robert, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, John. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. And we had a great talk before we started the show. But I want to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself and your company, InterimExecs. What do you do? And how did you come about starting that company?
I run a company called InterimExecs, as you said. It's a global matchmaker between organizations that have some leadership need and a team. We call it RED Team. RED stands for Rapid Executive Deployment, which is an exceptional group of executives around the world. And that was formed based on lots of years of it's about 7,000 executives who showed up on our proverbial doorstep, if you will. We developed ranking and scoring and screening, and about 9 years ago launched the concept of Red Team.
Yeah, I saw that. And so essentially what it is if a company is in need of an executive or in need of a staff or going through a big transition, they're going to call you and you can bring either 1 or 2 or a whole team in, right? Is that the way I understand it?
Yes, exactly. That's what it is. It sounds, now it's easy for us. It's interesting that when we started this about 15, 16 years ago, it was impossible. I mean, literally, I was asked prior to starting this, I'll give you a little formative history. I'm your classic entrepreneur. I've been in many different kinds of startups, some that I started, some where I helped other entrepreneurs, usually around technology, massive amount of failure around that. Luckily, over the years, I've been in 3 IPOs, and I was the guy on the team who led a number of company sales where a strategic buyer paid a high multiple to buy a smaller early stage company. But I've been an interim CEO before we started InterimExecs. I was an interim CEO for many years. When social networks came around, Facebook, MySpace, LinkedIn, I started wondering how many people around the world were like me with this weird job title. And so initially we started a free search engine, and thousands of executives from around the world showed up, and it was another failure. As a business model, it was a total bust.
It's interesting you say that. We've had multiple guests on the show that were entrepreneurs, and they almost all have a story in their journey where they did something that failed. Just from your experience, what was that like? And then did it help you in your next stage and the next things that you did?
Well, my first failure was the most noteworthy. I was in business school, and I was at Northwestern, and Northwestern University, Kellogg was at the time ranked the top business school, if not the world, the US. And I was kind of bored, and so I dropped out to go start the first magazine anywhere in the world that covered online and internet. I was only about 5 years too early, ran out of cash repeatedly, and so I launched at the age of 26. I had raised some money from wealthy investors, and within 2 years, the company went bust. And there really is no experience like being a 28-year-old thinking you're just going to be a failure forever, and walking into federal bankruptcy court, downtown Chicago, to go file papers for bankruptcy because the whole staff has been laid off and there's nobody else to go do this, and I was the founder. That was a unique moment.
Yeah, that's a unique moment that no one is an entrepreneur. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been in it 7 years. That's my biggest fear, is that doing something, making a bad decision or getting too stretched out with cash or what have you, that I would end up in that situation. I imagine it's the biggest fear for any entrepreneur.
Easily. The funny thing is, so I had a pity party for myself for about a week. Only one person was invited. And then I kind of realized, wait a minute, we had all these assets. We had major advertisers. We had sold thousands of subscriptions. We had one of the highest sell-through rates on newsstands of any magazine. I thought, all these assets. And so I ended up buying the rights back out of bankruptcy court, starting again, and eventually got on the magazine, The Business, put me on the Inc. 500 list for fastest growing businesses. So I went from can't do anything right to I couldn't do anything wrong at some point. But it was interesting that after, so I did the magazine for 10 years and then sold it to a big publisher. Along the way, I was helping a lot of other entrepreneurs. Then when I became an interim executive, I was working with a lot of company founders. And in some cases, where a business is desperate and it might have to go through a reorganization, or there was a fight among investors, I could see this utter fear on the face of the entrepreneur, the founder. And I realized that it was like, oh my God, I hated what I had to go through, but I actually see the benefit of it, which is, it's like, well, you're a military guy. I was at war. I went into battle. I was shot at, and I survived.
Right.
And it's kind of an irreplaceable experience that someone who hasn't been under fire does not understand at all.
Yes.
And so I've always kind of resisted it, but I realized I'm a far better, more responsible leader having gone through it. I never would wish it on anybody, but it happened, and it seasoned me in a way nothing else would.
Yeah. And it's a great lesson in terms of failure is it's a great leadership tool, right? You learn from it, you learn what not to do, you learn from your mistakes, but it's also, once you've gone through that rough patch, or that you survived it, and I think it makes you more resilient to, and it makes you appreciate when times are good, right? And it makes you more resilient when things get bad. You're like, well, it's not as bad as back then, that high water mark that you had for a rough period. So I always think that tough times are good for us, because I think it helps us in the good times, and it helps us when things get a little rough. You're like for me, I've never had as rough an experience as I did on a submarine at sea in the North Atlantic in the middle of a winter storm. Nothing is as bad as that. Life is so much easier than that. So for me, that was my high water mark, and I figured if I get through that, I can get through anything. So I think once you've had those experiences, it makes you more resilient for the future, and it just in my personal experience.
You're 100% right, and you have talk about a high water mark. Yes, serving on a sub. One of my sage mentors over the years, he quoted Benjamin Franklin. He said, "Experience keeps a deer school, but a fool will learn in no other." And I thought, well, okay, that was my badge as the fool.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit. You've got a new book out, and I want to talk about it. It's called Right Leader, Right Time. And in there, you've got these 4 leadership styles. And before we get into that, I want to just ask you, do a lot of the experiences that you have working with bringing in interim executives, working with companies that are going through transition or needing support, were a lot of the styles that you talk about in this book, was it based on observations that you've seen over the past, decade or so in this role?
Right, exactly. The impetus for doing the book was both when you have a chance to interact, 7,000 people showing up is a lot. It's I don't know that it approaches science in the data sense, but boy, it's a lot of anecdotal. And we saw these 2 patterns. The first pattern was not a good one. It was that the majority of these executives showing up, this is from 50 countries over a 10-year span, the majority of executives were experiencing careers and leadership journeys that were not remarkable. Mediocre really would be a way to describe it. And that was disturbing. The converse of that was when we looked at the top 2-3% remarkable leaders having exceptional career journeys, and we saw these 4 distinct leadership styles that was their way of expressing their abilities. That's why we had to write about it. The painful side was an equal motivator, though, because in particular, trying to get a message out to younger people earlier on in their career journeys and in leadership to give some cautionary advice. And to boil it down, I would say, do not try to be all things to all people. Because while that sounds very obvious, and you could even point this out to a lot of the leaders where their experience is just kind of okay, they would deny it, but the results don't bear out. The flip side is that for exceptional leaders, the further they go in their career, in their leadership journey, they keep on refining and refining. They get to a point, we use this phrase in the book, highest and best use. And exceptional leaders over time tend to reject more of what is not for their highest and best use.
That's interesting. I'm 55. I've been doing this for 3 decades. I've been a leader for 3 decades, and I think I would just tend to agree with you. Like there's, you've seen a lot, you've experienced a lot, so you sort of say that's not helpful for where I'm headed. And you can say no more than you say yes, and actually that's a kind of a fun place to be. So I think when you're younger, you're like, yes, show me, okay, that looks good. You're chasing rabbits where you don't really know your true style yet. You don't know where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are. And I think the older you get, or the more time you have, more experience you have, the more you realize exactly what you need and where your weak spots are, and you focus only on that. And it's you're less chasing rabbits, but you've got a guiding light, a guiding principle now. And I think that's where I am at. Is I know what I want out of life, and I know what my mission is, and that's clear. Anything that distracts me from that mission is not helpful, and I like that part. For me, at least, it's nice to be in that area where I'm not chasing rabbits anymore. So for sure.
Yes. Your journey is the exact example, because it's the chasing rabbits when you're young, and it's also When you're young, you need the job, you need the money. And this idea of, being so highly selective or whatever, good luck.
Yeah.
But this is something that grows and builds over time as your confidence grows. And to be able to be more able to embrace who you are, which is very hard when you're young. And by the way, I would say it's harder now because it's a much more distracted world. And so, not that it was easy. I mean, in anybody's career at any time, not easy when you're young, but now the same or more challenge exists.
Yeah, I think you're right. Absolutely see distraction as a problem. The too many inputs, I think, at this point, for sure. So let's talk about these styles, because what you say that they're unique leadership styles, but when they're applied, and this is what's important, I think, that I want to stress, is that when you're applied to the right role at the right time, they're going to lead to skyrocketing success for the leader in the organization. So they're styles that it's almost like a puzzle piece. They got to be put in the right spot to be able to be successful. So talk a little bit about those 4 styles and maybe some of the roles where they fit.
The 4 styles are fixer, artist, builder, and strategist, FABS. And in the book, we refer a lot to FABS leadership styles, or there's a survey tool coming out called FABS Leadership Assessment. Fixer, as the name implies, is the leader who is drawn to crisis. This is the person who loves running into the burning building. Now, here's the distinction, because all good leaders exhibit all 4 of these leadership styles at various points, and they have to. We're not trying to pigeonhole someone to say, you can only be this one thing. That's not what we're saying. The fixer, though, is drawn time after time to the burning building, as opposed to, for example, I am much more of the artist leader. And while I've encountered problems numberless times, in my career, I'm not drawn to it. I have to solve problems, but that's not really where I'm getting my energy. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I would say I'd identify a bit with that, because most of my career I was sent in to fix struggling manufacturing businesses. So I was sort of the fixer most of my life. So I identify that. I bring chaos to order. That's what I've always done, and grown businesses and fixed all the problems and kind of left it to somebody else after it was all fixed. And so I just kept doing that over and over again. That was sort of my role in corporate America for 22 years as a fixer.
And when you solve that problem, you got this adrenaline rush, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was a source of pride for me to be able to. It was like a puzzle that needed to be solved, and it was difficult, and it was about people and motivating people and changing people out, getting the right leadership team in place, and sort of like a Rubik's cube trying to solve and all these things. And I loved it. It was just energetic to be able to take that chaos and bring order to it. And I love that part of it, the challenge of it. Sure, yeah, I definitely identify.
Part of the energy you have is that, let's face it, there are not many people around you that can do that, or in that company or in that division or in that situation. You're it. If it was easy, it already would have been done.
Right.
But for the rest of the team or the leadership, it was viewed as kind of impossible.
Right.
So they throw someone really talented at it the first time, and if that person can solve that problem, can fix it, they get that hook planted. Yeah. So this fixer energy has to keep doing it over and over.
For
One
sure.
of the prompts for the title Fixer is that we had done a book about champion company founders before this book. It's called How They Did It. And one of the public company CEOs, out of the blue, he said, during one of the interviews, he said, if I put a fixer into one of my companies and it isn't broken, he'll break it just so he can fix it. And I thought, that's fascinating.
Unfortunately, I think I identify with a little bit of that, because I do like a little bit of, like I have my own company, right? And we've got the thing kind of running like a top now. So there's nothing broken to fix. So I sort of, it's interesting. So I do have some nervous energy, like there's nothing to fix. What can I fix?
Yes, you got it. Well, I'd have some thoughts on that, but so that is fixer energy, fixer leadership style. Artist is the leader who views the world is a blank canvas or is a piece of clay to be molded. Standout example in the world everyone knows is Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And I'm referring to Elon and Mode of Tesla, SpaceX, Boring Company. I am not referring to Elon. As you and I are recording this, John, Elon is in week 5, I think it is, of owning Twitter. And he is showing absolutely how much he is not fixer energy as his lead style. He has an ability to solve crisis. I know he's done it time after time, but he is primarily driven by innovation.
Yeah. Well, and solving things that no one's ever tried to solve. I mean, really big problems. The Boring Company, putting, tunnels underneath major cities. I mean, so yeah, you're right. Blank canvas, that's definitely his style.
Well, to his credit, he has, in some ways, he started single-handedly. He's changed 2 major arenas, industries in the world. Yeah. I mean, electric vehicles is where it is now at, is a thing around the world, an impetus around the world because of Elon Musk. Let's face it.
Yeah.
People thought he was crazy in the beginning, and the same thing is true of private space exploration. 100%. Everyone thought it's the province of governments and NASA and everything else. He's completely upended that.
Yeah.
And by the way, for anybody out there that's got limited money as opposed to unlimited money, it's an interesting contrast between Elon Musk, SpaceX, and Jeff Bezos, because Jeff Bezos essentially, could throw unlimited money, Amazon profits at his space venture, and he's still not in orbit.
For sure.
He hasn't achieved orbit yet.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think he's much of he's a different kind of leader, but certainly not a blank canvas kind of leader like Elon is, for sure.
Yeah, well, I don't even want to compare him on that. It's simply the idea that Elon did it, and when he started SpaceX, he didn't have the resources he has now.
No, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
So that's artist. Artist is the renegade. Artist is the outlier, the outsider, the person on your team that does not fit in well. One of the leaders we interviewed in the book was a lieutenant to Andy Grove. Andy Grove, arguably the best CEO Intel ever had. And Andy said of this guy that he was his wild duck. He said, you have to have a wild duck on the team. And what he meant is, you got all these brilliant engineers, you're all trying to work on the semiconductor, solutions, cram more onto the chip. And you had to have this outlier, this renegade, who was throwing wrenches into things on purpose to get you to all think a little differently at points.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Leadership skills are like any other skills. You need to practice them to get better at them. Best-selling leadership author John S. Rennie knows this. That's why he's written a new book called You Have the Watch. It's a guided journal for leaders designed to take you through an entire year of leadership training. By the end of the year, you will master 50 of the most important leadership skills. If you want to have a greater impact on the results and people in your organization, go to youhavethewatch.com and pick up your copy today.
This podcast is brought to you by Jeremy Clevenger Fitness. As a high-performing leader, you know that leadership isn't about telling people what to do, it's about leading by example. And for most people, the one area they are lacking when it comes to leading by example is their health and fitness. By improving your health and fitness, every other area of your life improves. But how do you get and stay fit as a busy leader? Well, you do what you've always done. You hire the best person for the job. Now, don't struggle on your own. Put Jeremy Clevenger on your team. Jeremy will work with you to help take your physique, mindset, nutritional habits, and more to the next level with his step-by-step, all-inclusive coaching program. Now, I've worked with Jeremy for the past year, and I'm in the best shape of my life. So if you want to step up your game, reach out to Jeremy at jeremyclevengerfitness.com to find out more and get your initial consultation scheduled with him today. This episode is brought to you by the Fraternity of Excellence. The Fraternity of Excellence is an online and real-world community for men who are looking to improve in all areas of their lives. The men of FOE are working together to become better husbands, fathers, and leaders at work and in their communities. They live by a simple philosophy: as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Now, I've been a member for more than 3 years, and for me, I finally found a brotherhood of men that I was missing from my time in the military. Now, I love being around guys who are dedicated to becoming a better version of themselves. So if you're interested in becoming a man of excellence as well, go to fraternityofexcellence.com, or you can reach out directly to me to learn more.
The third leadership style is builder. Now, I know everybody in business is, yes, I'm a builder. I get that. We mean something specific, which is the energy that takes the smaller or nascent product, service, client, team, and takes it to market domination. The mantra for builder is market. What tends to happen for veteran builders is when they get that product, team, company to scale, to market domination, you will see that person get bored. You will see them usually rotate off to do something else. You see it a lot among folks who hit IPOs, and they need to go back and do it all over again.
Yeah, I definitely can see that as someone who's been through the journey, that there was a lot of fun and energy in that building stage to get it to a certain level. Now it's, it's right. It's so there was so much, maybe because I'm a fixer, it was so much chaos, and we brought it into order, and now it's kind of running smooth. And it's like, so you're right. You lose a little bit of that adrenaline for that growth, and kind of you're at a little more steady state, and that you're right. I definitely can see that, and that's where you've got to get the right person now in that role to take it to the next level. To really grow it into, So absolutely, yep, that makes a lot of sense.
And so that next level is the remaining leadership style, which is strategist.
Yeah.
We could have called strategist, conductor, pilot, quarterback. This is the leader at scale. This is the leader at an organization so complex or vast in size that for the leader, it has gone completely beyond personal span of control. Stephen Covey had this phrase in 7 Habits of your personal span of control, and it tends to be that leaders who are primarily wired as fixer, artist, or builder, their team size is 10, it's 20, it's 50, it's 100, it's 200. But it typically is not 1,000 people. It is something where there's a personal relationship with those people, and they're going to drive for something that is incredible. Strategists cannot rely on all personal relationships to do what needs to be done in a vast organization. One of the strategist leaders we interviewed in the book, you'll be happy to know, John, the former Undersecretary of the Navy, Janine Davidson.
Oh, nice.
And it was very interesting that the language of each of these 4 styles is radically different. And to hear Janine describe how you could have impact in the Pentagon, how do you have impact? You're at over 1 million people employed into an effort. And she talked about systems of systems. It's a level of impact or abstraction that you just will not hear any similar language coming out of a fixer or an artist or a builder.
Yeah.
I definitely get the strategist. The strategist is talking about loyalty, mentorship, cross-training. And just tends to be kind of a vast amount of experience, usually at one organization. Totally different language for the other 3 styles.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely I got a little taste of it in corporate life when I kind of moved up and I had multiple plants underneath me. And the bigger I got, the more people I had reporting to me, the more I didn't like it. So it's interesting that I clearly wasn't, I'm not a strategist. I mean, I like to be with a small team, getting something done. And so I think you're right. You get to the point where I clearly was like, I'm not comfortable in this role. I don't know all my employees' names and their families and their wife's names. And I don't know that anymore. And I don't like, to me, it's a personal connection, like you said. And a strategist it's about systems and processes and standardization. And that's not my bag of tea. It's interesting that I can clearly
just to
identify.
Be clear with all your listeners, we're not saying all great leaders have to do strategy. They're doing tactical and strategic things.
Right.
We're meaning a definition here for strategist that is always at a point of scale.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's that I said earlier, it's a puzzle piece that fits perfectly into that role of somebody that's taking, that scale of a company very large, that has that tendencies or those skill sets that fit perfectly in that spot. If you put an artist in that spot, it's not going to be a perfect fit, right? They have maybe some skills around that, but they're not a perfect fit. A builder wouldn't have that perfect fit skill set. They might have some of those skills, but it's not a perfect puzzle piece fit. A strategist is like that perfect piece, that Pentagon person, that's a million people. Right. I got it. They get energy from that, where I didn't. I did not like that. I didn't like going to the shop floor and not knowing my employees' names. I hated it. So interesting. Right. Yeah.
So John, for anyone listening to this who's still skeptical, let me give you a different example and see if it resonates for folks. For about the past 100 years, medicine has become specialized. So John, you and I are getting to know each other. And if you say, I got this pain in my foot, well, if I know a really good podiatrist in town for you, Wake Forest, North Carolina, would say, I got a great podiatrist for you. But I can guarantee you, John, I am not sending you over to an OBGYN. I'm not sending you to a neurosurgeon.
Right.
I'm not sending you to a cardiologist. I'm sending you to a podiatrist.
Right.
Okay? So we as a society have accepted and now demanded that there are over 100 specializations in medicine. And look at the outcome for all of us. Longer health, just so much longevity, so much more happiness, relief of pain. It's a completely different society as a result, right? It's better. Well, in business, we don't do that.
Right.
In business, we assume if one person in a role does something great, and especially if they amass any money, oh my God, they must be able to do just about anything.
Yes.
Not to go pick on Elon, but this is the example he is setting for all of us, which is none of us are all things to all people. And he ain't crushing it so far. Anyway, I'll stop picking on him. We all know of examples of people where it's like,
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I sense in corporate is we tend to take puzzle pieces that don't quite fit perfectly, but we take a hammer and we slap them into place and we sort of make it work. And I saw so many leaders fail because they weren't in their sweet spot, right? And I didn't know this terminology back then, but I can clearly see that they were like artists in a builder scenario, right? Where they weren't in the perfect fit they weren't in the perfect role for their strengths, right? So, and I think if you using this framework, if you find the right skill set and you plug them into the right role of what's needed and it fits their strengths, that's when you're going to have this skyrocket, as you call it, the skyrocketing performance. And for the leader, they're in their sweet spot. They're in their comfort zone. They're in their, this is what I'm good at. And like I can tell you, when I was plugged into fixing plants, that was me. I lived for that. I got my energy from it. Every day we got better. Every day I saw improvement. Every day the scrap would go down and the productivity would go up and the shipments would go up and the customer satisfaction would go up. I'm like, this is great. This is nothing better than this than in my entire life, was seeing the things turn around. So I was in that right role. I was the right person for the right role. So, and I clearly, when I got bigger, I felt a little bit out of place when I was in the big organization with multiple plants and there wasn't as many problems. I wasn't excited. So interesting, just reflecting on my journey, when you're in the wrong role, you definitely feel it, you sense it.
Yes. And the joy of being in that right position for yourself is incomparable. You're in a state of flow, right? As the book says, and we focus our research and activity on business and leadership of business. But to be very clear here, the forms of human genius are pretty much unlimited. And so, at one point, one of the organizational psychologists we interviewed, he said, Gallup has research that 90% of leaders are in the wrong role.
Oh, yes, I've read that.
And I don't think the takeaway message should be to someone who is not crushing it, which is, oh my God, I'm never going to be successful. I think it's the understanding that the more you can embrace what is your highest and best use, the better off you are. And this does not mean it is in the leadership of a company. Now, one day I was reading, as we were doing the book, I was reading, I can't remember how I got into this. I have a little bit of a fear of heights. So I go onto a site and it's a how-to, how a skateboarder drops into a bowl. Okay, skateboard parks. And you drop into one of these bowls and it's about a 5-foot drop, right? You can picture a skateboard park, okay? And they have these instructions from an expert, step by step. How do you do this, right? You line the board up at the lip. You put all your weight on your back foot. When you get to step 5 or 6, and your front foot, there's no weight on it, but it's at the front edge of the board. It's out over space, okay? You ever skateboarded, John?
I mean, no, nothing like that, but yeah.
Okay.
I
have not. I was just vicariously getting a thrill out of this. Well, there's this moment where what you have to do is you have to commit 100% of you to going straight down. And basically it feels like your head is the first thing. You have to put all of your weight on your front foot. You have to go straight down 100%. And if you do that, you will land on your feet at the bottom of the bowl. But what this expert said for sure is if it's only 99% of you, if there's 1% holding back saying, I just don't want to crack my head at the bottom of this bowl, you will fall.
Yes.
You will fall. Well, that kind of genius to be able to do that on a skateboard, that's what we're talking about in terms of this authentic you, if you are cut out for leadership, which is 100% of you going into this. Because what you described in your fixer mode, you're unstoppable. That's the thing we all need to do. And this is not a thing that is ever really static, because one day you're on top of the world and everyone loves you and you're getting praise and the numbers are up and everything is great. And the next day something went wrong and your favorite person quit and it didn't go right. And so this is a continual kind of practice of perfecting, not arriving at perfection, but perfecting.
I love it. So I'd imagine in the book, you're going to help the readers identify with where do they fit in these four skill sets. Is that right?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Just I was saying in the book, you actually will help. You're going to help the readers, help them find where they fit in these set of skills. Is that correct? Yes.
Yeah, and the first kind of discovery is simply it's exactly in a way like what you and I are going through, which is reading and learning, or listening and discovering more about yourself. The other thing we are doing is launching a free tool and assessment. It's called FAB's Leadership Assessment. And so it's about 3 minutes, and someone could take that and hopefully get some discovery out of that as well.
That's fantastic. And when will that be out?
I keep on saying to everyone, a couple days. I'm pretty sure by the time your listeners are listening to this, they can go to rightleader.com and they'll see a link for the assessment and they'll be able to take it. I will tell you, fair warning up front, it's about 3 minutes long, and you'll instantly get a result. And when you get the result, what it'll say, primary leadership style, congratulations as fixer, congratulations, whatever comes up being, there's going to be one further question, which is, did we get it right? Because this is very much of a work in progress. We've only so far done this test on about 500 people.
Okay.
And so we're working on it because there's a lot of things we believe that are not yet validated in the statistical sense.
That makes a lot of
sense.
sense.
I'll give you an example. You as a fixer and builder, we think are linear styles. It tends to be that leaders that are great fixers or builders tend to do one company at a time or one division. Artist and strategist, that's not possible. There's a very good reason, for example, with Elon, that he has to do Tesla, SpaceX, and Boring Company at the same time. He has to have that kind of distraction. Strategist leaders are the same in all walks of life. When Obama was president, he said there are 5 crises demanding your attention at every single point in time. You had to have that kind of distracted focus. That's an oxymoron, but artist and strategist styles need this parallel.
That makes a lot of sense. Absolutely makes a lot of sense. For me, give me the four walls and here's the people. This is what needs to be fixed. Got it. I got it. Just leave me alone. I'll fix it. Right. So,
but
if you say,
if you're an investor in a company and you need a fixer and the person shows up and says, I'm the greatest fixer in the world, I'm also working on these two other companies fixing right now, run in the opposite direction. Do not hire that person.
Yes, I agree with you on that for sure. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Well, this has been, Robert, this has been fantastic. I think we've really just kind of, scratch the surface of this book. And I'm really going to encourage our listeners to take a look at it and just really understand where you fit in the spectrum. So Robert, how can people find out more about you, your company, and this new book?
Thanks, John. I can be reached at interimexecs.com.
Okay, great. And we'll put links to that. And we'll also put
the book is on all of the usual platforms and sites. People can see that anywhere. Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, we'll put a link to your company, to the book, and then therightleader.com once that's out and ready so that they can get it and they can take the assessment and see where they stand. I think for me, very clearly, I definitely fit in the fixer category. And I think that it's nice that you have this model because I think it really helps us understand where we are and what roles we should seek out to be able to fully utilize our skill sets and our experience and what really gets us, like you said, in a flow state. And so this has been, Robert, this has been fantastic. Thanks for coming on the show and sharing this new book and sharing your journey, your experiences, and this new way to look at skill sets.
Thanks, John. I'm honored.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.
Hey there, I'm DC. I host the rock podcast, Back to the Arena, The Interviews. It's about a 30-minute podcast where I talk one-on-one with a band who has released new music. You can find us on all the best podcast sites like Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, and more. If you're a rock fan like me, subscribe today to Back to the Arena, The Interviews.
Electricast.
Are you a fan of classic cinema or a young person who wants to discover the best films of all time? Do these legendary movies still hold up?
On the Generation Film podcast, two guys who grew up when movies dominated the culture share a great film with a panel of young movie lovers and see how it plays for today's generation.
We discuss changes in storytelling styles, representation,
The making of each film, its initial reception, and how its meaning has changed over the years.
Join us as we explore cinema classics across generations on Generation Film.
Electricast.